I've got people that have been under investigation for a number of years for very similar sites. And it takes the police ages and ages to do anything about them. There are so many sites, lawful sites, that are easily available that contain illegal material. But the police don't seem to do anything about it. When you go to the dark web, which is even more difficult and difficult to track, the police are just not resourced to do it.
With me today is Marcus Johnstone, a PCD solicitor who specialises in criminal defence for those accused of sexual offences. Thank you for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
As I understand it, a child exploitation site called Kidflix was shut down recently, leading to arrests around the world. First of all, can you tell me roughly how many people use sites like this, and also how something with the name Kidflix could not be shut down much more quickly?
Well, there's millions of users potentially. I think the official figures have identified about 1.8 million users. And it's only been going a few years, 2 or 3 years. It's how the name comes about. It's designed, I suppose, to attract kids, but also to paedophiles, people who are hunting kids. And that's the way the internet is geared these days. There are so many sites being set up on the internet with I think, that intention. They have, on the face of it, a legal site, but there's very much the dark side that runs beneath it.
Mm. And you said in your statement following the shutdown of the site that some people can be dragged into them through naivety or deception. How does that happen? How can somebody get involved or go to these sites by accident?
Well, the sites are very well constructed. They're constructed by very devious and often intelligent criminals with the aim of making an awful lot of money from cybercrime. The sites are often designed to be addictive, and they're addictive also to attract children. So there is also a lot of adults who are very susceptible to anything which they can become addicted to. And that might be alcohol, it might be drugs, it might be gambling, it might be pornography, illegal pornography, child pornography, etc. And so when you put that combination together of the sites that draw people in, then those are susceptible to that will fall into the trap. The adults using them, it could be those that are purposely hunting children, people that will groom children, and that's their intention. You will also have people drawn into it, perhaps without the initial intention to do that. They might start, and I work as a solicitor in this area, and I hear stories all the time, and people often tell me that, look, I had a pornography addiction, legal pornography addiction, and just with the constant flow of sites and the new media and people trying to get you drawn into other things and offering you images, offering you videos, that often there's so much they become inundated with the information coming through. Do you want to buy this? Do you want to buy the other? And then invariably it tips over the line into the illegal activity. So it affects so many different people. If you add on to that the fact that many people, I think, who are using the sites have mental health issues themselves. I've noticed, certainly from my practice and with clients that I have, particularly young people, there's lots of young lads now who are getting involved in this. The vast majority that I see have got neurodiversity issues. So it's an interesting area. I don't think it's anything that's ever been examined or explored in any detail, because it's quite a new developing area, but they certainly have personality traits that make them susceptible to this type of activity.
And you mentioned that some of the sites can be aimed at attracting kids to them. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, a lot of the sites are designed to attract people, to make people join onto their site, a community. If you go onto the TV and look at all the sites for lawful gambling and bingo, they don't sell their sites on the basis that you're going to lose all your money. They sell their sites on the basis that, look, you as a loner can make lots of new friends and have a great time and have great fun and just lose all your money while you're doing that. And these sites operate in the same way, that they will say to people, look, you might just think you're on your own, no friends, in your own bedroom. You can now have all these friends, and it becomes interesting, and they want to have that contact, they want to have the friends, and it draws them into the sites. So the sites are designed to make people want to join those sites. If they weren't, people wouldn't join them. And they have to create a buzz about them. They've got to get the name out there. And that might be with any lawful site. You know, look at Snapchat or Instagram or any social media, any big site. It's got to have some selling point to attract people to it.
So if they're, I suppose, advertising themselves in a simple way to put it, how do these sites not come onto the radars of police and investigative forces quicker?
Good point, and I asked myself the same question. I mean, the recent crackdown with Kidflix, this is just a drop in the ocean. I mean, I'm aware of these sites 3-4 years ago. You know, I've got people that have been under investigation for a number of years for very similar sites. And it takes the police ages and ages to do anything about them. There are so many sites, lawful sites, that are easily available, that contain illegal material. But the police don't seem to do anything about it. When you go to the dark web, which is even more difficult to track, the police are just not resourced to do it. The police will do their very best, but it's beyond their control. It's different. It's completely different these days. It's not normal Bobby on the beat policing. What made me smile to some extent when Labour came in power, and most new politicians, new governments will harp on about more Bobbies on the beat. We're going to control crime. Bobbies on the beat will do nothing about illegal activity on the internet, nothing at all. Most Bobbies on the beat don't actually understand the internet, wouldn't know how to find a cyber criminal. It's very, very difficult, very, very intelligent work. These are very intelligent criminals, and it takes a lot to catch that type of person. They will catch the user, the odd user, but that will do nothing. I think by analogy, it's a bit like, the police arresting a kid selling drugs on the corner. As soon as they arrest that person, somebody else will take their place. They're not getting the person who's supplying the drugs wherever they come from, possibly in some other country. And so it will carry on. They won't resolve the problem.
What more could be done to try and sort of stop these things at the sources?
I don't think you will ever stop it, is the sad answer and the depressing answer. It's gone too far. You won't be able to do that. You won't be able to turn back time and stop the internet and everything that brings with it. It has lots of good things, but it also has a lot of problems. But that's with anything in life, with any development. But any big development like the internet and with cybercrime, it takes people by surprise. And, I'm old enough to remember life before the internet. And in a way, I learn a lot from my kids. They say, well, Dad, what about this? Have you done that site? Have you done this? And I've no idea what they're talking about, because young kids are way ahead of the parents. And so lots of these sites are geared up to attract children, but any site that attracts children will attract the adults who are attracted to children. And you'll attract the paedophile hunters, those people, the grooming gangs, etc., that will want to do that online. So it's a big problem. I don't think there's anything that can be done. It certainly needs a lot more investment. You need a lot more, I think massive increase in salary to police officers, perhaps with specialist units being started that are trained with the appropriate qualifications to understand cybercrime, to understand these websites, the dark web, how they form, how to track them down. But you're not going to get those people working in those jobs for what police officers are paid these days. It's not going to attract them. So you're never going to get to the bottom of the problem. You'll catch the people on the surface, that's all.
You've mentioned the dark web a couple of times, and for those who don't know, could you explain why it's harder to do things or track things or police things on the dark web than it is?
Because most people will go on the internet and they'll do a Google search, and anything that you'll find on Google is generally lawful. You don't tend to have illegal activity taking place on Google. You might find some people advertise something that gets shut down. So that's really what most people think of the internet. Do a search on Google, you find your results. Well, illegal activity, the real illegal activity, takes place in a deeper area, and there's various ways to gain access to the dark web. So it does take some knowledge, it takes some finding out, but it's not beyond most people's experience. If you really wanted to find out how to access the dark web, you could do so. I mean, there's probably something you could find on Google actually would tell you how to access the dark web. But you can get onto the dark web, and that's where it's not controlled. So I was talking to somebody recently, and I mean, some of the stories I hear with various cases I'm on are incredible. I find them hard to believe. But this again was a young man involved on the dark web, involved in illegal activity, online communications, images of children, etc. The illegal sites, but also he had a drug addiction. But he, whilst he's on the dark web, would also order and buy his drugs on the internet and have them delivered to his local post office for collection. And this is the life that is just easily accessible to anybody out there that knows how to do it. You talk to a police officer about that and they've no idea what's going on.
So as you said, there's nothing to be done to stop things at the source. Is there something to be done to prevent people getting to those sites at all?
I don't think you will, really. I don't think you can. I mean, there's talk, isn't there, recently about doing the age verification and so on. But on the dark web, you can buy a passport, you can buy a driving license, you can buy anything you want. So you could have a 16-year-old person or a 12-year-old person buying a driving license for an 18 or 19-year-old or a passport for a 20-year-old. You can buy anything on there. So they can easily bypass that. If they're that way inclined to go on the dark web to look for illegal material, they can easily get past age verification. I think one thing that may be a way forward, but a lot of the companies would probably not want to do it, is just with the fingerprint checks or eye scans, because you look into your computer, and most computers have got a telephone, a video, and so they've got the photographs and so on, where they could scan your image. That's held on a database with appropriate age verification. We all have national insurance numbers. So there is ways to do it if the government wanted to do that, where everything could be checked with your official age. And you would only gain access to sites if you had the biometrics that were input into those sites. But as soon as that's mentioned, you'd then have the various human rights groups kicking off, because it would be a breach of human rights and data protection, etc., etc. So you can't win.
What goes into shutting down or investigating sites like this?
A lot of money. And that's why very few are ever investigated and very few are shut down. And the sad thing is, as soon as one is shut down, it will be replaced by another one within hours. And another cyber criminal will come along, set a new type of site up, a new variant of that site, perhaps with more technology to evade the police, and up it goes. And most of the criminals that were operating on the previous site will know, and they'll switch on to the new site, and it will carry on.
What are some areas that you think we should investigate? Because again, I'm far from an expert on this.
It's okay. I think one area that's interesting, we touched on it earlier, is just the number of young people that are being brought into this area. Yes, we hear about with the Kidflix that's been mentioned recently, and the Europol investigation and closing down Kidflix, that's aimed at targeting paedophiles that are sharing videos online of child abuse. There are lots of other sites that give easy access to anybody to share images and to communicate with other people. Now, you can go on Telegram, you could go on Kik, there's various sites that you can join, and a lot of that is promoted as a good way for ordinary people to mix with other people and make friends. And if you've got an interest in a certain sport or a hobby, you associate with other people on that site. And so it's for lots of good reasons, it's lawful. But of course, you will also have those sites of people who are looking for something unlawful, and that's how it evolves. And then they'll transfer onto a different site. So you've got all these sites, but you've also got young children brought into them, and you've also got adults who are targeting those children. But what I'm finding, certainly with my job as a solicitor in this area, is that I'm seeing more and more young people who are being arrested by the police, because in a way they are an easy target. And in some cases, well, in fact, in increasing number of cases, it's children who are also being arrested. So it's children targeting children. It's children who are sharing images with other children. You're hearing a lot more about it within the schools. these days with sexting and texting and sending images, and lads taking photos up a girl's skirt in the playground. This is going on more and more all the time. And perhaps those kids see it as a joke, as a laugh with their friends to send the images round, but it's illegal to do that. And quite right, the police could get involved if they know. I think most forces don't get involved because the schools don't want the police to know it goes on. But when they do get involved, then the kids are potentially committing criminal offences. So you then almost criminalising young kids. You might think it's right that, yes, they should be criminalised for doing that, but are they the same as perhaps an adult who's targeting children or sharing images or getting images of children? So you'll have children brought into this, could I say innocently, without really knowing what's going on, but they get dragged into it. But you will then have them taken advantage of. They'll be on these sites, but they will also in turn be groomed by adults, and they're sharing images, and then they're being blackmailed. So the whole underworld of what goes on is quite, well, can I say fascinating, from a legal point of view, because there's so much of it that goes on that people don't realise. It's very sad. It's extremely sad what goes on. And most parents are not aware of it. Their kids, they think, are doing the homework, or they're on the Xbox playing a game. But they may well be on the Xbox talking to somebody in another part of the country, another part of the world, who they think is another 14-year-old lad or a 14-year-old girl. In fact, it's some adult who's grooming them. And before you know it, they're encouraged to share images. And then they've shared an image, then they're being blackmailed for more images. And I've had, dealt with cases like this over the years, and they're very sad, very depressing. And there's no easy answer to any of this, how you solve this problem. So you have an extreme of young kids being involved, adults being involved, those that have an intention to do it, those that are drawn in without really realising what they're doing. I've also seen an increase in young people who are really getting involved in serious activity, to the extent that I would almost regard them as a sociopath or a psychopath by what the internet turns them into. And I think the internet has a large part of turning them into it, because without the online, without the ability to communicate with people around the world or in other parts of the country, without really having to show your face, I don't think they would be committing these offences. But you do have very serious crimes being committed, blackmail, leading to serious sexual offences, even by young people. And this is just not even known by the police or the authorities because it's not detected.
Do you think then, outside of what the police could do, there could be some answers in educating kids and children in schools about this? Not necessarily about the more severe risks, but how to awareness of that there are people that are doing these sorts of things, as well as the fact that, like you say, some of these things that kids don't realise that actually they're criminal offences and sex offences.
Yeah, there's always more for education. There's always a benefit in extra education, but who's going to provide the education? If the schools are busy with their curriculum at the moment, there's not enough teachers to go round, and then you say to the teachers, oh, by the way, we now want you to go into all this as well. And let's face it, the teachers won't understand the dark web or what goes on. If the police don't fully understand what's going on, how do you expect anybody else to know what's going on? So I think that's really difficult to educate. But also you've got people who are just in informative early years. They're quite young, they're easily influenced. If you think about the number of adults that are taken advantage of by fraud, how many times do I'm on the train today and you listen to the station saying, pickpockets around the station, watch your bags and so on. And they're telling adults all the time, and people still get pickpocketed and still get taken advantage of. People still defrauded. Fraud emails or money disappears from your bank. This is happening to adults who are aware of these things but can still get taken advantage of. So when you think of children in the same situation, yes, you can tell them, but will it make any difference? Probably not. And it's a numbers game for the criminals. They work on numbers. If they get 1 in 100, they're fine with that because they can make more and more from that person. And there's an unlimited number of people around the world really for them to target.
Bit of a strange question potentially, but do you think there is any role of AI in helping with finding these sites or finding this content and deleting it automatically and taking it down automatically and that sort of thing?
There will be, and there's no doubt that AI is going to be huge in the future. I mean, we're seeing the developments of AI now across all industries, including law, where in my area. So that will be a factor. But also, of course, the criminals will also use AI. So it's constant competition. You know, the police will try and do one thing, or the authorities will do one thing to try and crack down on crime. The criminals are, let's face it, ahead of the police. You know, there's got to be the crimes there before the police react to then. It's always reactive policing. There's nothing proactive. They're not trying to stop a crime happening before it happens. They tend to wait for it to happen and then wait another 5 years and then think, blimey, how do we solve this problem now? You know, so this big crackdown that's all in the news with Europol and Kidflix, you know, I was aware of these issues on the dark web years and years ago. Why has it taken till now before they close one site down? I mean, it is laughable almost. Some of the statistics that are going around, jotted one or two down, the 1.8 million users on Kidflix. There's 91,000 videos, over 6,000 hours of continuous running time of these videos. With all the police investigation, with 35 countries, there's 1,400 suspects identified, but there's only 79 people arrested. And they've managed to save or protect 39 children. Well, 39 children being saved, that's superb news. But in the scheme of things, in reality, it's doing nothing. In the sad fact, it's doing nothing. If you've got 79 people arrested from 39 countries with millions of users, it's nothing. It's doing nothing. And that's the sad fact, that you're never going to get to the bottom of this, and it's just going to carry on.
Do you think that there is maybe not anything to be done? Well, is there anything that could be done proactively then to try and get ahead of them?
I think it just needs a complete rethink of policing, of the various units that are set up, of the resources. I think police need to be paid much more money than what they're paid at the moment anyway. I think you need to have perhaps a specialist police force if you have a local community for police, and you'll then have a more specialist national police force. Salaries have got to increase massively to attract people with the high qualifications, with the ability to understand this area of cybercrime, to understand data, to understand design of games and data that can attract children, to know where to find it, how to find it, for the police to infiltrate these areas. A lot of cases that I'm involved with, we do see undercover police officers who will pretend to be children, or will almost pass themselves off as paedophiles to try to get into these groups and then try to find these people, and that happens quite a lot. But it's scratching the surface of probably lawful sites. You know, they're on Kik, or they're on Telegram, or they're on Snapchat. There's nothing that goes deeper than that. And you tend to have one officer who will just be inundated doing all these cases, perhaps for a couple of years before they burn out, because you can only do so many. It's just too depressing. And they don't have the support, they don't have the resources, there isn't the manpower there to deal with it all. So it's a problem. So I do think there needs to be a complete rethink of how you police this area. If you're going to have most crimes now committed on the internet, online offences, an ever increasing number of sexual offences committed online, it's the biggest area for sexual offences, then you do need people that understand online crime. It seems to me, when I hear the different stories that come out in the press, and there's a big hoo-ha about we've done this, we've done the other, and isn't this great, we've cracked down and we've closed this site. And I just think to myself, well, I was dealing with this 3 years ago, and why has nothing happened in the last 3 years? It just seems to take forever to do anything about it. There was a quote from one of the people involved in the Europol investigation, saying that the Europol hosts a victim ID task force twice a year. And it's these things that are set up that makes me just scratch my head and wonder what's going on. What is a task force meeting up twice a year going to achieve? Nothing, in my view. It needs a complete rethink by people that will know how to deal with these types of criminals. You almost need criminals to target the criminals. How that could happen, there's a few ideas, but I think one approach that I often thought may work is you arrest these young people, or well, anybody for these on the surface, and what's the point of giving them a fine or a community service order, letting them go on bail and they're back out committing offences potentially? It may be worth saying, give them some type of immunity if they turn in 5 other people who are higher up the food chain. And if you did that with each of them, then that might lead to more people being caught and more people being monitored, and you might find the people further up. But that doesn't happen. So anything that might work isn't put into practice. Anything that we know doesn't work is continually put into practice. And that's why we've got an ever-increasing crime rate.
Marcus Johnstone, thank you for joining me.
You're welcome, thank you.